the term moonlighting and what does it mean? In simple terms, it means taking up an extra job or assignment to have an extra income, typically without the employer's knowledge. Now, while some employees feel an extra income is the need of the hour, employers and experts believe if someone is a full-time employee, they are not expected to work elsewhere. And having two salaries without your employer knowing is unethical, with reports of Wipro firing 300 employees found to be directly moonlighting for their rivals, and Infosys and others in the IT industry also concerned about the same. Work ethics and guidelines of the IT industry have now come to the forefront. Now more than ever before, while industry body NASSCOM has said and have told NDTV they will be issuing a statement on the issue shortly, the debate on moonlighting has sparked a huge concern. And of course, to debate this, we have Mayuresh Joshi, market expert. We will also be trying IT analysts through the day. So some questions really to begin with, Mr. Mayuresh Joshi, some believe having an extra income is okay, but being transparent and transparency really is the need of the hour. Do you agree with this issue that the IT industry is facing now more than ever before?
Afternoon, Sakshi. Thanks for having me on your show. So first of all, I would love to see what NASSCOM has to have a take on this, and their circular will be extremely awaited on this. So generally, I think if you're entering into a long-term employment contract with a third employer, I think the conditions that are mandated in terms of fulfilling your obligations towards the employer and the job obligations thereof in terms of your deliverables, I think that is something which needs to be taken very, very seriously. With all these cases probably coming up, yes, I think the ethics part is the most integral part in the entire argument. And in my personal opinion, again, I think having two full-time jobs when you have already signed a contract with one of the employers up front, I think does not seem to be right and ethical for that employer in perspective, and in fact both the employers that he's probably working for.
Sure, and of course, I know you've been speaking to IT analysts as well. So, many are also saying while work from home is today not just, restricted to the IT industry alone, thanks to the pandemic, we've also had work from home increasing for other sectors as well. But why is it then that the IT industry seems to be witnessing this impact more? Any thoughts that you can share on this? Of course, you've been interacting with IT analysts as well through the day.
Oh, absolutely. So I think, as you rightly pointed out, I think it might be more diverse in terms of a lot of other sectors also getting impacted. But IT generally has a space because they've got largely 6 hours that they have to mandate in, maybe an 8-hour shift during the day. I think the flexibility probably comes through the remaining of the day to probably fulfill maybe other obligations that they can have. So because of the 8-hour shift and then because it's a highly specialized job as well, I think the kind of demand that has been creeping in for the sector as a whole, you're obviously seeing that through numbers, whether it's the big IT companies or the mid-cap IT companies as well. Attrition has become a big, big headache for all these companies at large. And therefore, the kind of salary hikes, the variable pay incentives that have been doled out to retain employees as well, I think is a significant cost onto their balance sheet as well. It's almost 50-50% in terms of the overall operating cost in terms of salaries that they meet out. So largely, again, I think IT sector has more flexibility compared to a lot of other sectors at this point of time in terms of working hours. And therefore, I think this is one sector where the convenience of work from home, at the same time, having the technology expertise that you've got, which a lot of other companies also need, just replicating that in other areas with other employers to that extent. I think it does not take too much of an headache in terms of a learning curve as well. I think some of these factors probably lead to all these situations and instances that we're facing.
Right, of course, and I was also speaking to some analysts this morning, and of course there were thoughts on, employee performance, the work-life balance that everyone is increasingly talking about as well. So your thoughts really on employee performance then, if such a, unethical, as per several IT experts, if this is happening increasingly, then what happens to the performance of these employees? How do they assess that? Any thoughts on that you've been able to gather so far?
No, so two aspects. One, I think the deliverables are already mentioned at the beginning in terms of what they're expected to do. So I think the part and then the niche areas that they probably operate out of, I think the kind of performance-based incentives that come through, because they're expected to be experts in terms of the niche areas, obviously comes through. The second element obviously becomes in terms of how to probably lay this out when it comes to a larger canvas. So if you're probably going up the learning curve, they probably have a lot of incentives that employers also roll out in terms of learning new applications, learning new platforms, And therefore, I think there is a significant cost that is also attached from an employer perspective in terms of learning, in terms of development. And as these, and if such instances probably happen, I think the burden of cost probably improves or increases furthermore. The other elevation point also becomes in such cases like these, the replacement, if any, of these mid-sized employees as well becomes very, very difficult in a market like these, where attrition levels have already remained very, very high. So I think the cost of replacement, along with cost of learning and development, goes substantially higher. Even if employees are fired, it takes a substantial hit in terms of the EBIT margins for these companies.
Right. And lastly, really, your thoughts on the way forward. Is transparency really the way forward then? And your message really, to the IT industry at the moment and IT firms, IT employees, your message on this at the moment?
I think I don't have a message per se, Sakshi, but I think it's more in terms of ethics and integrity. And I think a lot of the HR departments across IT companies will strengthen their processes with all these instances that they have come to foresee. And therefore, I think the HR department will have a lot more on their hands in terms of both employee engagement as well as ensuring that integrity along with ethics is strongly managed by employees as they are expected.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. The focus, of course, does, spread, and the focus is really back on, the spotlight is back on work ethics. The spotlight is also back on policies and strengthening policies across sectors, as you said. Of course, we will continue to track this story with greater detail. For now, thank you so much for joining.